So one of the many treats from the Star Beast was the reveal of the new TARDIS interior. It's one of those things that you always get, or usually get, at the start of a new era. There's that and the new title sequence as well, and obviously like a new sonic screwdriver, but we'd seen that already. The TARDIS we'd also sort of seen already, or some of us had seen because there were the leaks going around, you know, kind of I think concept art or sort of pictures of the set in its kind of unfinished state that were going around a good few months ago now, I think. So yeah, I think it's a shame that this wasn't a complete surprise to everybody and that they didn't manage to keep it completely under wraps, because they did a very good job and it very nearly was under wraps, but unfortunately those bits and pieces did leak out. I think it would have been a really lovely TARDIS set to see for the first time on screen, I think, and a lot of people will have had that experience, of course, people that didn't see the leaks and stuff, but I think regardless, I mean, thoughts on this new TARDIS, let's just get straight into this, because I think the first word has to go to the characters themselves, to the Doctor and Donna. The Doctor asks Donna, you know, what do you think? And she goes, it's gorgeous. And it really, really is. It is a stunning set, completely. And, you know, there'd been so much hype beforehand about how this is like the biggest, best, most logic-defying TARDIS set ever constructed. And I think it really did live up to that hype. The scale of this thing is absolutely incredible. I mean, obviously haven't actually seen it in person myself, but just from seeing it now on screen, even the leak photos don't really give you a sense of just how big this thing is. I think it's only when you see those first few shots, massive shots, and where David is there running around the set like a joyous little kid, kind of, you know, having the time of his life. That is only when you properly get a sense, and you see, you know, him in it, you see people in it, you see the Doctor and Donna, and you see them in relation to the scale of the thing. You think, my God, this thing is bigger than most people's houses. I mean, it's easily bigger than any other TARDIS set that we've had. It goes from floor to ceiling, you know, right round this studio, taking up a whole studio, I believe, at Bad Wolf down in Cardiff. It is simply incredible. It takes that idea of bigger on the inside to new heights. And, you know, I think it's too early to kind of do rankings and things like that, you know, to say that this is one of the best TARDISes ever, but I think it's certainly up there, you know, even just from this one appearance that it's had, because that is the thing with the TARDIS, this bigger on the inside space. You know, you want to believe that it is bigger on the inside. You want to believe that it is this magical, wondrous space. And with the score in this scene as well, when we first see it from Murray, it has that, you know, complete Disney sort of feel, that magical feel of this space just being infinite and wonderful and impossible. And I think that's what you really get from this set in particular. You know, you don't really see the joins of how it's been put together. It genuinely seems like a spaceship. So what's different about this TARDIS, and what new features do we have, for better or for worse? Well, I think the first thing to point out, obviously, is that we have gone back to the old style of the doors. So for the past 5 years or so under Jodie and Chibnall, we had that kind of porch thing going on, where you sort of had the two walls of the TARDIS in addition to the front of it, so you have like a kind of three-walled porch there, you know, kind of stuck on to the actual thing, onto the actual set, whereas now the doors are flush with the wall instead, so back to how it was, you know, with the first RTD era TARDIS, and I suppose to some extent as well with the ones that followed, although Matt Smith's first one was a little bit different because the doors were kind of off to a side somewhere. Obviously, I've already mentioned the scale. I mean, how could you not? But in terms of what we actually get here, what the walls actually are, they're basically kind of completely comprised of roundels, all individually lit, all kind of, you know, towering up to the ceiling and right round the surface of the set. Everywhere you look, and I just think that is brilliant, you know, especially for a 60th anniversary TARDIS, because that harks back right to the very first TARDIS sets from Classic Who, where they'd have these walls of roundels, you know, kind of very simplistic sort of design, and yeah, with those they'd only kind of have sort of maybe 1, 2 or 3 actual walls. The rest would be like photo blow-ups, you know, of those walls kind of there in the background to kind of make up the walls, but because they couldn't afford to have them going all the way around. So to compare that approach from the 60s to what can be afforded now, you know, the budgets now, and what is possible now with this, I think, again, it just kind of takes an idea that was always present with the TARDIS and just really takes it up a notch and takes it to its natural conclusion. Another thing that very clearly calls back to those early sets, you know, is this colour scheme, the whites, the greys, the kind of minimalistic, simplistic, futuristic overall aesthetic of this set. It is the first one we've seen in that style in a good few years, I suppose really since the 80s, because all of the new series sets, all the new series TARDISes have been much more kind of grungier, for want of a better word, or darker, or more kind of moodily lit. You know, they've gone with a different sort of style. You know, the first RTD era TARDIS was very, very different. The same sort of broad idea, but in terms of how it looked, yeah, the colour scheme and everything couldn't be further away from what we've got here. So it's interesting to see that they've kind of gone back to this style after all those years. Because I think there has been a line of thinking in recent years that the TARDIS should be like a lived-in space, it should have furniture, it should kind of look a little bit cobbled together, whereas this is much more like something you might see in Star Wars or Star Trek or just sci-fi in general. I think, again, you know, as a fan and for an anniversary TARDIS, this really works for me. It really ticks those boxes, and Russell has pointed out as well in one of the many interviews he's done, I think for Unleashed or the podcast or one of those things, that basically we have had a sort of classic series style TARDIS, obviously, in New Who in the past few years. Firstly, in the 50th anniversary docudrama, An Adventure in Space and Time, that's what it was built for. It was then brought into the main show, I think, firstly with Hell Bent, and then, of course, we saw it again, you know, variants of it in Twice Upon a Time, and then in Jodie's era for the Fugitive Doctor's TARDIS, obviously in Fugitive of the Judoon, and the Time's Children, and Revolution of the Daleks. So Russell had been keeping an eye on this set and been really liking what he was seeing, and he was basically wondering to himself, you know, do I like it because I'm a fan, and just because I'm a fan, and because of the classic series connections, or do I like it because it's actually just a really good piece of design? And if you hadn't guessed yet, he basically concluded that yes, it is just a really good piece of design and it deserved to come back and have a modern spin on it. You know, it's been long enough since we've had a TARDIS like this, and this aesthetic with these colours and stuff. So yeah, I think that's a really great decision. The console itself sort of follows that style, but with a little bit more of a jumbled together aesthetic. Not so much as that first RTD era console room, but yeah, there are more things going on here, some of which we've already glimpsed in Who Spy pictures that have now been revealed to be of the TARDIS. Yes, that was correct. But kind of more sort of metallic, sort of bronzy, silvery, coppery bits and pieces, parts, the usual buttons and switches. Generally kind of still kind of futuristic, sort of spaceshipy aesthetic, but yeah, with a little bit more of a cobbled together feel. And I love how the stepped bit in the middle of the column, or the rotor, or whatever you want to call it, kind of harks back to the 80s TARDIS as well, with Peter Davison, with whatever that thing was that was in the middle of the TARDIS then. It's kind of got that same sort of feel of laser cut pieces or whatever. Another big thing about this TARDIS is how accessible it is as well. It's the most accessible TARDIS, and not just for the sake of being accessible, because that's kind of how it should be, really. I mean, back in the classic series, never mind kind of wheelchair users or anything, back in the classic series we had K9, and you know, famously K9 couldn't really get in and out of the TARDIS before. I believe there's going to be some kind of ramp or something that enables wheelchair users or K9 or whoever to do it now, but we're yet to see that on screen. But certainly in terms of the interior, we now have all of these kind of walkways, and there are no steps, no obstacles, you can just move around freely, although some of the walkways do look slightly steep, so I'm not quite sure how that would work if you're in a wheelchair or whatever. But yeah, you know, win-win, you know, both in terms of the accessibility thing, and also just because it fits into that futuristic aesthetic as well. You know, this is just kind of how we expect spaces like that, you know, spaceships or futuristic spaces to look anyway. I think the one thing I would say is that with the railings, they look alright, but I just think it's a bit of a shame that the joins, the screws and things are still showing, because it kind of takes away a little bit from that sort of smooth, futuristic style where you can't see how things are joined on, you can't see how things work. That's the only thing I think I'd say about that. Obviously, at the end of all those walkways, we have these circular doors that go off into different parts of the TARDIS as well. Again, something that wasn't present in that first Russell TARDIS, so great to have it brought in here. I've read, I think, on Twitter that these doors don't actually open, like physically or practically, but they can do it with special effects and stuff, so that's good to know. I guess the only other thing to really talk about is just the overall look of the set. You know, is it too empty? You know, does it need more furniture and stuff? That's a criticism that I've seen kind of bandied about by people. I think for me, although I can understand where those criticisms are coming from, I do think that for this futuristic spaceship vibe, you do kind of need it to be empty, spacious, clean for it to work, and uncluttered as well. But that said, you know, maybe over time, bits of furniture will be added to this TARDIS, a bit like the Series 7B TARDIS when it was taken over by Capaldi in Series 8. And maybe that'll happen when Ncuti takes over this TARDIS. You know, maybe he'll add bits and pieces, like there's a jukebox that's rumoured to now be in the TARDIS, but obviously that's not been seen yet. So maybe there'll be bits here and there, but I hope not too much. And on that note as well, actually, I think the really nice thing about this TARDIS console room is that although it does have that sort of white, clean, futuristic feel overall, because of the way that the roundels work, because they're all lit up and they're all round the room and they can all change colour as well, you know, this space does feel very adaptable. It doesn't feel like it's just one thing, just one colour scheme. Now it can be any colour you like, and that gives a different feel to the space as well and keeps it fresh. And we've had a little glimpse of that already just in the episode itself, with that little kind of rainbow sort of sequence of the reds and the yellows, the greens, the purples, whatever it was, all these different colours. So again, when Shooter takes it over, that's another thing, you know, that maybe he will adopt his own colour scheme and favour certain colours. And there are rumours of like having a disco type thing going on there, with the roundels lighting up in sequence with music on said jukebox. So yeah, I really look forward to seeing that. But yes, overall for me, positive vibes from this TARDIS. I do really like it. You know, we've got to see it more in action before you can properly sort of pin down, you know, where it ranks with the other ones. But yeah, I just think, you know, first impressions, it is a beautiful set. Beautiful set, a remarkable bit of design, a real sort of technical feat in terms of how it's been put together, with all these curved walkways, the curved walls, you know, all the individually lit roundels as well, and also just the sheer size and scale of it as well. It's just a sight to behold. Such a pretty TARDIS set, and I really look forward to seeing it more in future episodes. What are your thoughts on the new TARDIS? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Are you somewhere in between? Do you have reservations about it? Are there things that you like about it in terms of the improvements or changes that have been made? Whatever your thoughts, I would love to hear them down in the comments below. If you have enjoyed this video, please do leave a like, and make sure you stay subscribed to the channel for more stuff like this in the future. But otherwise, until the next one, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye for now.